Good morning, everybody. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You are tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, also known as TMI for short, where we bring you way too much information. Anything from news, politics, lifestyle, culture, these fad diets, whatever. Today, what the kids are into, Ted, and the taboo, the occult, anything and everything goes, because we believe you can never have too much information. If you're looking for a straight-laced, button-down news program, this show is not for you. It is not safe for work because we are not regulated by the FCC. So some
or
swearing.
By anyone at all.
That's right. There's no rules. So it's stuff that you already know that you want to hear about, and then maybe some stuff you never knew that you needed to know. And then, of course, we're always going to laugh along the way. We are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to please like and follow this show. You can subscribe for free on YouTube. And then hopefully we'll get monetized very soon and get some ads and stuff so we can start making some income. If you're on Rumble, if you're on the desktop version, you can hit the subscribe button below the chat box. It's next to that dollar symbol. The subscribe button will get you $5 a month, and it'll help support us so we can, keep bringing this show to you live every day. So without that, I don't know. Ted and I will probably be on the street. Maybe Ted, you can do cartooning. You could be a busker in the New York subways.
Yeah, there are those people who do like what they call mall caricatures, like the little body, the big head with the big cheesy grin. I don't think there would be much of a market for my drawings given my drawing style. I might get punched in the face for the way I would draw some people.
You draw political drawings.
I could do that. Yeah, no, I have had some pretty outlandish ways of raising money. And my favorite one, and I think I may have told you this story, was I auctioned off dinner with Ted Rall. And I have stories to tell. Well, it was dinner. It wasn't, although there were people who appeared to think that, they treated me like, like it was, like I was a girl before the Me Too movement. Like, if they bought me dinner, that they'd be getting me breakfast as well.
Well, that's, people think that's implied, right? But this was just dinner. Just dinner with Ted. So
I don't know.
But
I don't think it is implied, but I guess I was wrong. Yeah.
People can save us from that and save you from that by helping this channel grow with a $5 monthly subscription. So with that, let's hit the jaws and get to today's top headlines, because there are a lot of them. Let's go.
I think we need a swoosh.
I know the swooshes. Everybody does the swoosh.
Or how about like the sound of a drone coming in, like hot and heavy, like no. Or I could tape the construction sound outside of my studio here, and like right now I've got it going. It's free.
I'll look for other sounds. I'll look for other sounds, but I do like the corniness of the jaws.
The thing is, it's like, to quote the great philosopher Huey Lewis, famous from the news, sometimes bad is bad. Anyway, all right, headlines, all right. Yay or nay?
Let's do it. Yay.
All right, so President-elect Donald Trump has announced another round, fast and furious, of cabinet and administration picks. Let's go through them. All right, Secretary of Defense it's looking to be a guy that really nobody's heard of, Pete Hegseth. He's 44 years old, co-host of Fox's Fox and Friends Weekend. He didn't even qualify for Fox and Friends proper during the week. He's been a contributor with the network since 2014, where he developed a friendship with the Donald, who used to show up on the show all the time. Hegseth has no senior military or national security experience whatsoever, so he's perfect for the job. If confirmed, He would inherit the job during a series of global crises, Russia's war in Ukraine, and of course the ongoing attacks in the Middle East by Iranian proxies, the push for a ceasefire between Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and of course escalating concerns about the growing alliance between Russia and North Korea. Hegseth is also the author of The War on Warriors, Behind the Betrayal of the Men Who Keep Us Free, published earlier this year and half read by me on the table of a local bookstore. I have to say, frankly, I was curious. I was curious about the thesis, and it was, let's just say that it was not quite half baked. It was like a quarter baked. But this was a very, to me, this was a, if I'm in Trump world, and forget, look, the Democrats aren't going to like anything he does, right? By definition. But if I'm in Trump world, I'm not happy about this choice. I mean, he doesn't have gravitas. And this is a job that requires gravitas.
I'm not even in Trump world. I was not. This came out of left field. Pete freaking Hegseth. I know the Trump world people are touting, oh yeah, he was a military guy, but like you said, he wasn't even like an officer. I mean, sure, there's something to be said for, a combat veteran such as Pete Hegseth, but there was no, strategery in his position, to borrow from Bush Jr. There was no strategery in his, role in the military. And then, sure, they're touting that, oh yeah, he, went to Harvard or Yale or Princeton. I don't know. He went to some Ivy League schools. Great.
So did I. Can I be Secretary of State? Can I be Secretary of Defense? I went to Columbia. It's an Ivy League school.
Right. So it's what else? Like, he's been a news host for 10 years. I'm not qualified for that. I've been a news host for 15 years.
Look, I think there's jobs, and if you're super smart, like say Pete Buttigieg, look, he had no qualifications whatsoever to be head of the Department of Transportation. None whatsoever. But he was a smart guy, and he kind of it took him a couple of years to figure it out, but he figured it out. I don't think Secretary of Defense is like that. I don't think you can just. No. I don't think you can just.
It's a job you jump in and go.
I really want. I want my defense secretary to be someone who really knows they don't have to be a combat vet, but they have to be a military dork. They have to know insides and outs of the entire history. It's a very complicated. Yeah, it's a you have to know. Yeah, no, it's a big, and especially the United States, we're such a militaristic country. Defense is, 54% of our federal budget. So we really do.
At the very least, I thought maybe it was going to be Tulsi Gabbard, because at least she's active in the military right now. She's an officer.
True.
And she had congressional experience. And she's very smart. So
and she was in Congress. It's true.
Right. So, and the world knows her. The world has seen her.
And there hasn't been a female Secretary of Defense.
I thought he was really going to go that route and really, bust that myth of Trump is anti-woman and go with Tulsi Gabbard, especially because she formally became a Republican in the past couple of weeks. I really thought maybe it was going to be Tulsi Gabbard. I was personally holding out for Douglas McGregor, but allegedly he might be kind of an advisor, again, an advisor role, but
Tulsi's still waiting for a job. So we have a lot to get through here. You did mention women. Now, Kristi Noem has been picked for Homeland Security. She's, of course, a well-known conservative who faced sharp criticism for telling a story in her memoir about killing her rambunctious dog. She will lead an agency crucial to Trump's hardline immigration agenda. She used her 2 terms leading a tiny state to tiny in population to evolve to a prominent position in GOP politics. South Dakota is usually a political afterthought, but during COVID, Noem didn't order any restrictions that other states had issued and instead declared her state open for business, which was easy since nobody lived there. Trump held a fireworks rally at Mount Rushmore in July 2020 as one of the first large gatherings of the pandemic. She takes over a department with a sprawling mission. In addition to key immigration agencies, the Department of Homeland Security oversees natural disaster response, the Secret Service, and the TSA, who work at the airports. I watched The Five yesterday on Fox. It's the highest rated cable show anywhere, and it is the highest show on Fox. And I got to say, when they talked about this, even they who carry water for Trump and the Republicans, they were like, that's a really big job. And they were like, Kristi Noem, really big job.
But they didn't say that about their guy Pete. They didn't.
What do you mean?
I mean, Pete Hegseth is a Fox News guy, and they didn't.
Right.
They weren't.
No, they
like,
didn't say that about him.
Huh.
They were not going to say that about him.
Yeah,
But
they're not.
but
Yeah.
Kristi Noem,
No, they're thinking it.
I mean, look, I will say she will be the most attractive head of Homeland Security we've ever had, of either sex or gender,
lady,
depending on how you split that up. But okay, so I gotta say, in both of these cases, I would like to see the Senate do more than rubber stamp these choices. I don't think either of these two people are qualified at all, and
right.
and I would hope that if there are any Republicans who have any integrity, that they would go to Trump through back channels at this point and say, you need to withdraw these two choices and you need to try again. These are not good. You know, these are just, I mean, you're literally, it's not even ideological like it was, against Clarence Thomas. It's literally like, they're not they can't do the job. It's like,
they're not ready.
It's like Clovis doesn't have opposable thumbs and he can't drive a bus. I mean, it's like that.
They're a little too JV, I think, in my opinion. But also, I think one of the weird things, I mean, I think she is another signal of Trump world keeping exclusive, like this club, because she's been an ardent supporter from the jump. And I don't know how she managed to survive this love triangle, quadrangle. But she was having an affair with Corey Lewandowski. And that all came out. And that, and it's like this nepotistic, gross, incestuous, like Trump world thing. And somehow the two of them managed to keep their marriages together. And now she's going to be Homeland Security.
Well,
there you
also,
go. Speaking,
by the way, I know that the the administration is interested in dissolving the Department of Education. I would suggest, not so humbly, that the Department of Homeland Security is really the first department that ought to be completely dismantled. It's a bureaucratic nightmare full of redundancies created in the stupid aftermath of America at peak stupidity after 9/11. Trying to solve a problem that didn't really exist, and it should go. It should be basically go. I mean, this will never happen, of course. All right, let's keep going. William McGinley is White House counsel. He's a lawyer who served Trump's White House in a key political role this year. He was White House cabinet secretary during the first Trump administration and was outside legal counsel for the RNC's election integrity effort during the 2024 campaign. I guess they didn't really have to do anything since Trump won. Look, White House counsel, that's, whatever. I have no opinion about that. If he wants his guy, that's his guy. He can have him.
Sure.
John Ratcliffe, former Texas congressman who served as director of national intelligence, also known as the DNI during Trump 1, will be CIA director. Ratcliffe was director of national intelligence during the first year and a half of Trump's first term, leading the government's spy agencies during the pandemic. Look, nothing could be worse than Gina Haspel, as who personally supervised waterboarding and other forms of torture at Guantanamo Bay. Personally, she didn't oversee it. She didn't sign memos. She stood over them. She stood over and laughed and enjoyed the torture. Yeah. She was hanging out with Ron DeSantis and
Gross.
Chilling and watching it. So she's. I mean, it's hard to do worse than that. The bar is low. I'd be interested in knowing what our former colleague John Kiriakou thinks about John Ratcliffe for this. But let's keep moving on. Steve Witkoff will be special envoy to the Middle East. This one's a disturbing choice. He's a real estate investor. He's 67 years old. He plays golf with Trump, and he was hanging with Trump on September 15th when that dude was hanging out outside the fence with all those guns. Former Arkansas governor and Baptist minister Mike Huckabee has been named U.S. ambassador to Israel. These are both very dangerous choices because Witkoff and Huckabee are militant Zionists, totally in the tank for Israel. And it's hard to believe that there will be anyone even urging them to step on the brakes whatsoever. I mean,
look, there's the Huck right there with in Israel, presumably, or probably parts of Palestine, but same these days.
Same difference. I was going to say, yeah. I mean, Look, obviously, that's going to be something we should talk about at some point. We need to do a deep dive into Trump's policy in Israel. The last thing Israel needs is encouragement, and they're going to get plenty of it in this with these two. Now, without a doubt, the most interesting choice, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy, of course, was the billionaire who ran against Trump in the primaries. They will both together lead a new Department of Government Efficiency, which would, of course, require this will be a new cabinet level. It would require the Congress and the Senate to sign off on this new, ironically, creating a new bureaucracy in order to slim down bureaucracy. According to Trump, the pair will work together to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies. Manila, this reminds me a little bit of the effort that Al Gore quietly but quite effectively worked on as head when he was put in charge of a government efficiency streamlining operation under the Clinton administration as vice president. That's basically what Gore did during those 8 years. And so stuff like, for example, trying to simplify federal forms, or like when you download a form from a government website and it says, oh, this should take 12 minutes to fill out or whatever. That's all Al Gore, and he did all that. I mean, obviously the federal, it's not like bureaucracy.
He was really busy working on building the internet, Ted.
Yes, that's true. But
so cut him
that was before. But anyway, but the point is, I still think, look, it'll be super interesting. I mean, here's the question. Will they make it more efficient, or will they just take an axe to it and get rid of essential services? I suspect the latter.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of hatcheting of stuff, kind of in the way of, the greed is good, right? And like the big Wall Street firms come in and buy up your stuff, like we saw in the movie Wall Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they come in and just axe everybody out and gut it, and suddenly everybody else is, stuck doing 50 jobs instead of 1 or 2 things. And look, I get it. I'm well versed in how poorly our bureaucracy is run, and a lot of inefficiencies, Ted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my husband is a Fed, and I've seen it just, from work from home. I've seen how inefficient and ridiculous and stupid, how much money some of these people that really don't do their jobs. So there are people like
or
that
any
that
job. They don't even do any. They don't even do someone else's job. No,
right? They have a title. I mean, that exists. So
everybody
who's
been either in the federal government or adjacent to it, or for that matter, state and local government, knows what you're talking about.
I'm more worried about them hacking whole agencies that would be needed. Like, they've batted around the idea of getting rid of the EPA, the Department of Education in its entirety. They've, stuff like that, where I think that is part of the
education's been on the chopping block for a long time, right? Reagan wanted to get rid of it.
Well, the infrastructure of the United States, like the whole reason that we were in the first place, this beacon of light for the world once upon a time, right? Where everyone wanted to come here at one point in time to get an education, right? And that was in part due to the fact that we had a Department of Education that had standard regulations for the entire country, and there was a bar to be met, right? And when you start dismantling that,
by the way, it looks like Betsy DeVos will return to that position. God. Now, I will say, generally, she's kind of a nightmare, but I'm very pro what she did with Title IX in in getting rid of those kangaroo courts where, there were so many, mostly men who were accused of sexual improprieties in school, and basically they had a guilty until proven innocent structure, and they weren't allowed to cross-examine their accusers or even hear what she got rid of that, and good for her for that. She's kind of like an annoying person, but it looks like she'll come back to do that.
And her brother's the BlackRock founder, let's not forget.
And of course, interestingly, there's no confirmation from Trump about the idea that Marco Rubio might be Secretary of State, that's been reported, leaked several days ago.
Right.
It's been hanging in the ether. Trump hasn't issued anything. Normally he issues something on X or Truth Social.
Agreed.
Where he says something. It sounds like there's some pushback there. I mean, I don't think I'm sure Marco Rubio could do the job. It certainly.
You mean little Marco?
But little Marco with his little hands,
with his shaking water drinking.
I mean, honestly, I have to say, probably if I were gonna, I know he doesn't like him, but Trump doesn't like him. But if I were Trump, I would make some use of Ted Cruz. He's a really smart guy.
That's true. He is very smart.
And so, to me, I bet I could see Ted Cruz at one of these high-profile positions. But I don't think he's going to get it. All right, here we go. Outside of and of course, if we see or hear any more about any breaking news about, new cabinet picks or whatnot, we'll bring those to you. Special counsel Jack Smith and several members of his team are now planning to resign before Trump assumes office. That, according to the New York Times, reporting today. Sources say Smith, who of course oversaw those 2 federal criminal cases against the president-elect, this would be the documents as well as J6, is evaluating the best path for wrapping his work. Wait, was it the documents or no? It's not the doc. Yeah, it was the documents.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, it was.
It was the documents.
That's right. Because there's so many, it's hard to keep track. Is evaluating the best path for wrapping up his work before the inauguration, January 20th. So that's that, right? Bye-bye, Jack. Trump had said he was going to fire him anyway. So he's like, you can't fire me. I quit.
Right. I think that's what that is. But I think to anyone that's actually followed the cases, I think it's pretty evident that, after so many, the courts have kicked that case off the docket so many times because it was so flimsy. He keeps coming back with appeals and appeals and appeals. It's like, bro, you didn't really have a case. And it just was so plain on its face, in my opinion anyway, that this was lawfare. It was just, but now your team lost. Biden's out. Harris is out. Like, you had nothing.
The DOJ has a rule that you can't convict or jail a sitting president.
Right,
this sitting president's going to be 82 by the time you're all done. What's the fucking point, right? All right,
no fucking
Jack Teixeira, former Massachusetts Air National Guard member who was arrested last year for leaking classified military documents, was sentenced yesterday to 15 whopping years in prison. That's actually the deal he got as a result of a plea bargain. They're not exactly merciful there. The incident is considered the most extensive intelligence breach in at least a decade. Sentencing comes after Teixeira, who turns 23 next month, pled guilty in March. Pled guilty. This is what you get for pleading guilty to 6 federal counts of willfully retaining and transmitting national defense info. In exchange for his plea, officials spared him from being charged with additional counts under the Espionage Act. Teixeira was an information technology specialist who gained top secret clearance in 2021, 2 years after enlisting in the Air National Guard. They give pretty much top security clearance, I guess, to everyone. Clovis has it. Yeah. I mean, he got it before I did. Outside of work, Teixeira had been uploading a wide range of classified information, including about the war in Ukraine, to the Discord gaming communications app every week. The defense claimed that Teixeira didn't mean to harm the U.S. and was instead keeping his friends apprised of world events, much like we do here.
Yes. Well, I mean, I agree with his defense attorney. Obviously, he wanted to keep his Discord people apprised of world events, and fine. But the way
15 years, man, that's serious. I mean, I don't think he won't be out till he's 37 years old. Well, I mean, he could be paroled. Well,
but I mean,
it's ridiculous. I don't know.
It was a dumb move. He was a baby. To me, I mean, I would have
sent him away for 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Right. He did what he did, and they keep saying this was a case of national security or whatever. First of all, prove the harm. There was no harm. There was no actual harm. The actual harm that was caused was to the reputation of the United States in its position with the war in Ukraine.
And giving top security clearance to every moron.
to
right? I
every
mean,
little kid. He was like an 18, 19-year-old
yeah,
kid.
that's like what happened with Chelsea
That's what
Manning.
happens.
Chelsea
Yeah,
Manning was like very young, was a nobody, and had access to
right.
all this info.
Why do these nobody kids have this sort of access? And that's what kids do, right? Like he was like a 19-year-old kid when he started dumping this information, or 20 years old at the time. Sure, legally he's an adult, but the only harm that was caused by this was to the reputation of the United States and the narrative of what was happening in Ukraine, because that's what he was leaking. He was leaking stuff to his friends saying, "Hey, did you know all this shit is bullshit? It's bullshit what you're hearing on the news about Ukraine winning. They're not really winning."
Right.
And that's it was
That's what he did.
proprietary.
Now he's like, I
So
know
that's
better, right?
right. And he's like,
all right,
it's not
we
true.
have to get to two more stories. We have good news for sexually promiscuous people.
Ah.
The U.S. syphilis epidemic has slowed dramatically as of last year. Gonorrhea also fell. Chlamydia is below pre-pandemic levels for the first time. New numbers represent some good news about STDs, or STIs, if you prefer that acronym, which experienced some alarming increases in the past years due to declining condom use, inadequate sex ed, and reduced testing and treatment when the COVID pandemic hit. Last year, cases of the most infectious stages of syphilis fell 10%. That's the first substantial decline in over 2 decades. Gonorrhea is down 7%. That's the second year of decline, brings the number back down to where it was in 2019. 2.4 million cases of syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia were diagnosed and reported last year. All of those are, of course, treatable with antibiotics. 1.6 million cases of chlamydia, 600,000 of gonorrhea, and more than 209,000 of syphilis. Syphilis is a particular concern. For centuries, it was a common but feared infection that could deform the body and end in death. Yeah, famously, wasn't it Van Gogh whose he had syphilis and his nose fell into his coffee one morning? But I would hate that. That's not a good way to start the day.
Syphilitic brain holes in his brain.
It made him insane. Yeah, and new cases.
That's why he cut off his ear.
New cases went down starting in the 1940s when infection-fighting antibiotics became widely available, and they trended down for a half century. In the Old West, they used to boil their junk to try to get rid of it.
My God!
By 2002, however, cases began rising again, with men who have sex with other men being disproportionately affected. The new report found cases of syphilis in their early, most infectious stages dropped 13% among gay and bisexual guys. It was the first such drop since the agency began data in the mid-2000s. However, there was a 12% increase in the rate of cases of unknown or later stage syphilis, a reflection of people infected years before. Cases of syphilis in newborns, this is, I think, the grossest thing, passed on from infected moms, also went up. There were nearly 4,000 such cases, including 279 stillbirths and infant deaths. That means pregnant women are not being tested often enough, says Dr. Jeffrey Klausner of USC. What caused some of the STD trends to improve? Several experts say that one contributor is the growing use of an antibiotic as the morning after pill. Studies show that taking doxycycline within 72 hours of unprotected sex reduces your risk of developing syphilis, gonorrhea, or chlamydia. So if you're out slutting it up, just like drop a doxy the next day and everything's cool. It's like, doxycycline you take prophylactically if you're bitten by a tick, for example, right?
Oh,
and
okay.
So it prevents you from getting Lyme disease. So everyone should kind of have. I think I know you have to get it from a doctor.
Is it a singular Lyme disease or is it a plural?
It's a singular. Yeah.
Oh.
It's not Lyme's disease, it's just Lyme disease. It's named after a town in Connecticut. And in June, the CDC began recommending doxycycline as the morning after pill, particularly for gay and bi guys and trans women who recently had an STD diagnosis. But health departments and organizations in some cities have already been giving the pills to people for a couple of years. So if you get lucky tonight, but you don't wrap that rascal, make sure you drop by someplace where you can get a doxy, and everything will be A-okay.
Well, look, Ted, a couple of things here. Do you know that there's one demographic that STDs have been steadily on the rise? And I don't know if it's plateaued yet.
Elderly.
Yeah. The old people are getting it on, man.
There was a scandal here in New York a few years ago at the Riverdale, which is in the Bronx. It's the nice part of the Bronx. The Riverdale home for the aged, which is predominantly, New York and predominantly Jewish. And there was a huge STD outbreak there. The kind of young, hip director was called on the carpet on local news and asked about this. And basically kids were mad because it's like, my father or grandfather or my grandma or my mom, you're letting them slut it up there in the Bronx. They're all boning each other. Like what the hell is going on? And he said, look, it is our opinion that's a good thing. Sex is a very important part of life.
Sure.
And if you it helps keeps them happy.
Wrap it up.
Keeps
Old
it happy.
Wrap it up.
It keeps them happy and they're having a good time and more power to them. So rock and roll. All right. And finally, and most importantly today, My Little Pony has finally made it to the winner's circle, the National Toy Hall of Fame. After years as an also-ran, the pastel-colored ponies were enshrined in the National Toy Hall of Fame on Tuesday, along with Transformer action figures and the Phase 10 card game. Full confession, I've never heard of the Phase 10 card game.
Me neither.
If the Phase 10 card game came in here and killed Clovis, I could not identify it to the police. The honorees rose to the top in voting by a panel of experts and the public from among 12 finalists. This year's field included the party game Apples to Apples. Heard of it? Don't know what it is.
No,
balloons, just balloons.
Wait, what?
Just balloons. I think balloons are like. That's like, I don't know if balloons are.
Are they conflating it with condoms?
Are they inflating it with? Are they? Well, are they? I mean, balloons are not. Are they really a toy? I mean, you can play with a balloon, but I don't. I think it's
there's a balloon.
I think it's more decorative. Although, if you have a helium balloon, I don't know. I mean, a balloon seems to me like that's almost like a like a stick, like kids play with sticks. Is that really a toy? I mean, you can use it as a toy. I don't know. Anyway, but balloons still haven't made it. Choose Your Own Adventure game books, which I've heard of. Hess toy trucks, which are iconic. If you know about Hess gas stations, every Christmas season, they release these iconic, every model toys, very high quality, very cool, white and green, like garbage trucks or oil tankers or whatever. I mean, kids absolutely. Eric loved this. I mean, oh my God. Hess toy trucks it might be too regional. It's like you don't know about it outside of places where there's Hess gas stations and there's fewer of them than there used to be. But let me just say, man, they're the bomb. The Pokemon trading card game. Can't believe that didn't make it. Remote controlled vehicles. I mean, again, remote controlled vehicles.
Very generic.
No, but come on, that's a monster. I mean, come on, like
remote
controlled trucks and stuff. Sequence. I've never heard of Sequence. I don't even know what Sequence is. And then the stick horse. Again, the stick horse has lost its. I mean, it's iconic, but does anyone besides what's the word I'm looking for?
It's like very
mentally incapacitated kids still use like a stick horse.
No.
No kids one.
I mean,
with an IQ over room temperature. Wait, you have a stick horse?
My son does not. He never was interested in playing it with
Nobody is interested in playing with it.
He got one for Christmas one year and he was like, okay, cool.
Okay, so whoever gave him that is like not the awesome relative. You know what I mean? That's like, thanks, Granny. I love you. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a like a generational hand-me-down, like a vintage one.
Oh well, they're all.
Grammy,
yeah, I can't believe.
I think Grammy got it.
Some factory in Xinjiang where they're cranking out toy horses, stick horses. All right, and then as they say in the Simpsons, trampoline, the trampoline. Now, they say trampoline, but it's like, but the trampoline, that's a monster. That should have been in there anyway. And plus, it causes serious injuries, which is awesome. These are three very deserving toys that showcase the wide range of how people play, says Christopher Bench, VP of Collections and Chief Curator, in a statement. But for My Little Pony in particular, this year is extra validating. I'm like, The beloved toy was a finalist 7 times before finally crossing the finish line. So in other words, it was kind of the Susan Lucci of toys.
Okay.
Hasbro's mini horses, distinguishable by different cutie marks on their haunches, I want to make jokes about cutie marks on their haunches.
That gave way to the tramp stamp.
It's a little kinky. I didn't really understand. I mean, whatever you're into, no judgment here.
The tramp stamp.
We don't judge, although that's a lie. We totally judge. We're introduced in the 80s and reintroduced in 2003, outselling even Barbie for several years. That is actually surprising.
Okay.
The collectibles were recognized for encouraging fantasy and storytelling, not something you could say about stick ponies, just saying.
Okay.
The kind of creative play the Hall of Fame demands of inductees, including, along with popularity over time. Now, there I would say like Pokemon and Trampoline are very popular. Anyone can nominate a toy for the Hall of Fame, so you guys can go do that right now. Museum staff narrows the field to 12 finalists every year. Fans can cast votes online for their favorites, and the results are counted alongside ballots from a national advisory committee of historians, educators, and others with industry experience. In other words, it's run far more carefully than an American presidential election.
Interesting. Yeah, it's much more curated, and it comes from some experts. That's okay. Yeah, makes a lot more sense. But what are you gonna do, Ted? This is freedom. This is what freedom looks like.
Freedom. I mean, freedom isn't free. It's the cost of a stick horse.
Yes. Don't hate on the stick horse. It's a classic American toy.
No, it's like,
and I just want to say, Ted, we went into the wrong industry.
It didn't even make it into Toy Story 1, 2, or 3, right? There's no stick horse never made it.
Can't have a personality. Don't be a hater. Everyone should have one just because. It's a broomstick with a horse head on it. You can use it. You can use it to recreate scenes from The Godfather.
I know. I was going to say that. That's true. That would be
because weird kids like me did that.
You
just
did.
Saying. But it was
cut
the
off
1980s.
Did you saw off the stick?
No, it just kind of came off because it's kind of just glued in. So you just if you wiggle it enough, it comes off. And my 1980s. This is the 1980s. We didn't have the internet. So my friends and I recreated scenes from movies.
But did anybody open their bed and then see that and then scream?
That was a thing. Like you're supposed to play out the scene and you're and so that's what
I don't know if
a
mini horse head the size of say,
but that was our
a cat's
imagination.
Head would really scare me.
That was our imagination. We're mimicking what we saw the grown-ups watching.
Our producer is asking why He-Man didn't make it, and that's a good question. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I would personally Skeletor. Oh my God, Skeletor was the best.
The whole He-Man universe.
I was on Team Skeletor.
I don't. I think I just watched He-Man. I don't really know.
No, if you watch He-Man, you know Skeletor's his nemesis.
No, I watched He-Man, but I mean, I don't have a preference. But you
gotta have a preference. So He-Man was He-Man. Let's just say, putted from the rough. He-Man was not really a He-Man. Well, he was a He-Man in a sort of Village People kind of way.
Can you please ask our guest this question because he grew up in the United States, so I mean he would know.
What's his favorite? What's his favorite toy? All right, let's go. Let's bring him in. Let's bring him in. You want to introduce him, or do you want me to? I think
you can do it.
You have the info. I don't know. Joining us is Mark Sloboda. He's an international relations and security analyst. Follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Sloboda1, on his YouTube channel at The Real Politic with Mark Sloboda, and he's over on Facebook at facebook.com/Gramsci. As the Russo-Ukrainian conflict prepares to enter its third year of grinding warfare that has claimed untold lives and wreaked havoc on people and infrastructure, the election of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency has sparked speculation that a reduction of U.S. proxy support for the Zelensky government might force the Ukrainians to sit down for some serious peace talks with Putin for the first time. Russia has gained a clear military advantage in this war. Can or will Trump, as he has promised, immediately or at all end the Ukraine war? And if so, how? Well, what role will be played by likely incoming Secretary of State Marco Rubio or the European allies of the United States? Would the broad contours of a peace deal result in a rump Ukraine and an agreement not to join NATO, or something else? Are we looking at a full-fledged armistice, a ceasefire, or nothing at all, just continued fighting? Mark, thanks for joining us here on the TMI Show.
Ted, Manila, thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the TMI Show. And may I say that when I first logged on, the very first thing I saw is a giant picture of someone's tonsils in between the two of you. And I almost ran away at that point.
I don't blame you.
And
that's too much information.
That really is.
It really was. That was just great.
And then as a child, habits. That's
Yeah. As a child of the '80s and a victim of cartoons made to market toys to children, I'll just say that I'm on Team Thundercats. Thundercats, go!
Thundercats. I did like Thundercats, and I like She-Ra.
Or Rock'em Sock'em Robot, also awesome.
I wasn't that into them.
Really?
Not in the hall.
Isn't that like the DC version of Transformers? I mean,
I guess so. I don't know.
Not really. No,
but they're not in the Toy Hall of Fame either.
Yeah, it's a tough breed there. It's kind of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, where there's a lot of bands, and you're just like, wait, you're not in there? Like, what? I don't understand.
I think I had every single Star Wars action figure, toy set, vehicle, everything. Although my parents seem to love them as much as I did, to be honest. So,
do they still have them, or all the original?
I don't know if they still have them, but they did tell me, I guess about 20 years ago, that they had pulled them out and like pulled them all out one evening and looked at them. So that was
that's valuable. Those are valuable.
Speaking of old people's sex stuff, but anyway.
Oh no! Don't say that about the quotas. How dare you?
How dare you?
Mark's like, I don't want to hear. I don't want that. I'm not hearing this.
Hear what?
Exactly.
Okay, so
don't want to know.
Well, so Mark, Donald Trump promised to end the Russo-Ukrainian conflict immediately upon becoming president.
24 hours.
24 hours. So by noon on January 21st of this year. What shall we expect to have occurred by, say, 12:01 on January 21st?
I'll make such a deal that they can't deny, and then I can worry about China. All right. No, Trump is not going to solve the conflict in Ukraine or bring peace to the Middle East either in 24 hours. And I think that he is unlikely to do so at all. For a number of reasons. One, he is the president of the United States, and whatever he may have said as part of his campaign rhetoric, he now inherits. And so anything that happens on his watch, like, say, the really embarrassing, humiliating U.S. panicked withdrawal from Afghanistan, was started by Trump, but happened on Biden's watch. And so Trump made hay in the political campaign trail at us depicting that on Biden's watch. Similarly, if Ukraine falls, per se, during the Trump administration, Trump will receive, the blame for that. And meanwhile, all of the many, many neocons that he is already hiring to staff his administration, and boy, if anyone expected anything different, boy, are you naive and lacking any memory of the last Trump administration. They'll be telling him, if you want to end the conflict in Ukraine, you have to pressure Russia. You have to demonstrate strength. You have to escalate to de-escalate, because otherwise China and Iran will take that as a sign of U.S. weakness. Now, tell me you can't hear Mike Waltz and Marco Rubio and others whispering this into Trump's ears, from before the inauguration even happens.
It's what Henry Kissinger told Nixon in the late 60s, early 1970s about negotiating with North Vietnam.
Yes. So I can't see the U.S. offering any deal to Russia that Russia would accept. Russia's winning on the battlefield. They have no reason to accept anything less than the full realization and completion of the goals of the special military operation, which once again in the last week they have reiterated. Those goals have not changed, and the goal of completing them all is still absolute.
Do you want to enumerate them for people who are not? Do you want to Mark? Do you want to enumerate those 4 main goals for audience members who might not be familiar?
Sure. So Russia's been quite clear on this. What it needs for a ceasefire. Russia doesn't want a ceasefire, and what it needs for a permanent peace. And first of all, the Kiev regime and the West need to accept that Crimea, the Donbass, Kherson, and Zaporozhye have had referendums and are now part of Russia. The entirety of the territories. And some of that territory is still in Kiev regime hands, and is likely to be so for at least a year into the future, right? Which means that any type of deal would have to demand, on Russian terms, would have to demand that the Kiev regime pulls out of Kherson city and Zaporozhye city, which is extremely unlikely, to say the least. The other goals are that Ukraine restores the neutrality, which was part of their constitution up until the 2014 openly West-backed Maidan Putsch in Ukraine. They can't join NATO or the Collective Security Treaty Organization, by the way.
Which they're not qualified to do anyway, right? By NATO, according to NATO itself.
Right. Yes. Well, I mean, NATO makes decisions according to its members, and there are plenty of NATO members. Yes, whatever. Willing to. The NATO rules have been stuffed away before with previous admissions into NATO, and we've certainly the Poland, the Baltics, the UK, the Scandinavian countries are all too willing to look back any rules that NATO has, right? But also, it's unacceptable that Ukraine be a de facto member of NATO either, right? Just a weapons platform. That's not acceptable. The demilitarization of Ukraine with a very minuscule military left agreed upon by Russia. This was being worked out in the failed Istanbul communiques back in the spring of 2022. And the denazification of Ukraine, probably best understood as in local terms as the debanderization. Plus the rights, the language rights, the cultural rights, the religious rights, the political rights of Russian speakers, Russian leaners in Ukraine, which have been absolutely 100% violated since 2014, have to be respected and restored. And Russia has at times said that all Western sanctions must go away. These are very maximalist goals, it must be said, but Russia's in the driver's seat as they see it. Now, Trump isn't able to offer really probably any of that, to be perfectly honest, right? Because he would have to get a broad agreement from the U.S. bipartisan consensus in Congress, which is for more war, more sanctions, so on. Whether the Republicans are on top or the Democrats in the House and Senate, it doesn't make any difference. But also the U.S. foreign policy elite that Ben Rhodes called the blob, if you want to call them the deep state, the permanent bureaucracy, right? Trump has to force would have to force serious walking down concessions on America that these institutions are that ultimately have more power in determining U.S. foreign and military policy than the president does. He's not able to offer those things. So when Putin says "niet" to whatever deal Trump offers. And it has to be said right now, it looks like Zelensky would do the same thing for the Kiev regime. But let's put that to the side. When Putin says no, if you're not going to give us what we want, we don't accept your deal. We'll just complete it on the battlefield. Then there will be a very great deal of pressure on Trump to escalate. And I actually think it is more likely, particularly with the people that Trump is already bringing in to surround him, that at the end of the day, Trump will end up escalating in Ukraine rather than any type of peace deal that is successful.
But
as a bluff or legitimately?
No, as like real. I mean, it will start small, right? It will start with, long-range missile strikes, which Russia has promised to strike back against. We have heard from these kind of anonymous peace deals and so on being floated in the media, supposedly close to the Trump team. But we have heard Trump threaten to flood Ukraine with weapons. We have heard Trump threaten to bomb Moscow, right? There's a lot of people that I think are really projecting their anti-Kiev regime views on Trump to a excessive degree. I believe that Trump doesn't like Zelensky. I believe that he doesn't like the regime there, and he blames it, rightly so, for interference in the U.S. political system and playing a part in the disinformation that led to his impeachment, right?
And sucking up tons of U.S. tax dollars. Obviously, Trump, the Trump base
is
happy about that.
Trump is still now going to be the president again, and he owns that. And there are certain things that the president of the United States can and can't do. I don't believe the U.S. president can walk away from hegemony and the pursuit of it.
Donald Trump knows that there's this, conflict between the highly militaristic infrastructure in the national security apparatus and in Congress. Why did he consistently, repeatedly campaign on ending the Ukraine conflict? Is he just stupid, or is he naive, or is he lying? Like, what's going on?
Because he's a politician. He says what he thinks people want to hear in order to get elected, like every other politician. He campaigned his first term on improving relations with Russia. And what happened? Russian-U.S. relations sank to the lowest level that they had been up until that point. He armed the Kiev regime in Ukraine with lethal weapons, as he's quite proud of. He launched hundreds of rounds of sanctions against.
But
Russia.
He's experienced. He's a lame duck now. Surely he's a different. He's a different individual.
I mean, I think that plays into a lot of that, right, Mark? I mean, the fact that he's going in as a lame duck not only can have an effect on how he does the presidency, but to the other world leaders, that's going to affect how they react or respond to him as well, because they're like, screw it. Like, we got 4 years to deal with this a-hole. Like, whatever. We just need to manage the next 4 years.
If that was true, would he be bringing in Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, and others to run his administration?
Well, he might be thinking, they'll do what I say, right? I mean...
I think you're on hopium, to be perfectly honest.
Maybe.
I think you want it to be different. And I'm looking at
want it to be different.
What has come before and what is likely in realist terms to happen again. And if I'm wrong, I could not be more ecstatic.
I hear you. This is why we bring you on, though. It's your expertise.
I was still... Even as cynical as I am and having as much contempt in general for Trump as I did for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, I was still happy to see the liberals get their comeuppance again, to see their agony,
that's how
right?
I felt.
That felt. I mean, I didn't love.
It's too bad they can't both lose, really. But what can you do?
It is too bad. I enjoyed it. I allowed myself.
We have a
to enjoy
subscriber
it for.
question for you, Mark. On the eve of the special military operation, Putin said that Russia and Ukraine are basically part of the Slavic family. Do Russians still feel a strong affinity for Ukrainians?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are millions of Ukrainians in Russia. Millions, right? I mean, there were already millions before the conflict started, right? And then there were millions more refugees from 2014 on, and then millions more, right? After Russia started intervening in 2022, right? According to just the UN, some 5 million Ukrainian refugees entered Russia since 2022, right? And that's not counting those who took Russian citizenship, right? Which is millions more. Russians talk about it, and this is derided and insulted as a Russian world, right? And you have to understand that it doesn't necessarily mean Russian ethnic world, because there are different words even in Russian for what Russia means, right? When they're talking about the ethnic people, right, the word is Ruski, Russian.
Yes.
When they're talking about the state, the federation, the word is Rossiyski. It's not ethnic based. But Russia does talk about a Russian world where historically they have influence and cultural footprint, and absolutely they still see most of Ukraine, right? Arguably, West Ukraine, for historical and cultural reasons, right? It wasn't even part of Ukraine up until the late, up until the 1930s. Just before World War II. So, that arguably, I think that bears out, quite honestly, West Ukrainian national identity, for them, what it means to be Ukrainian. The biggest part of that is hating Russia. But in Eastern Ukraine, and even in most of Central Ukraine, it's viewed quite differently. And I speak from experience. My wife is Crimean. We have family in Donbass and Kharkov and Odessa. So absolutely, Russians, the majority sentiment is that Ukraine has been captured. Ukraine has been co-opted, that it is sick, and there's a sickness that needs to be purged from Ukraine. Western Ukraine, that's debatable. That's another story.
Speaking of East Ukraine, one of the viewers, Troglodyte, brought up a good point that today is actually the 10-year anniversary of when then President Petro Poroshenko ordered military action on the east in Donbass. So it's kind of a grim anniversary. I mean, are people talking about that?
I haven't necessarily seen headlines regarding it, but I don't read everything in the Russian media either. But I think there's so much focus on the conflict today that historical points like that almost slip by. It is only in the last month or 2 months that Russian forces have finally pushed the Kiev regime forces far enough away from Donetsk city that there aren't artillery and rocket shells following on Donetsk city on a, every other day basis, like they were for the last 10 years before that. So that's still very fresh in Russians' minds, right? And
10 years is, I mean, people like to think this stuff happened, this started in 2022. It really didn't. I mean, the 10-year anniversary just highlights how long and measured Vladimir Putin's response has actually been. I think it's more of a testament to that.
In fact, there's a lot of people in both Russia and in Eastern Ukraine that felt betrayed, that Putin let it sit and fester and grow for so long. And I'm one of those. I was very loudly critical of the Minsk agreements, in both iterations, and the fact that Russia didn't immediately intervene after the West-backed Maidan putsch in 2014. One of Putin's top advisors back then and still today, Sergei Glaziev, was saying that if we don't go in now, in 5 years, they'll have a 250,000 strong military to fight us. It was exactly right. Because back in 2014, the military was not obeying the new regime, right? There were literally tens of thousands of defections from the Ukrainian military, security forces, and police to the side of Donbass or Crimea and thence Russia. Even Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty had a report on the Ukrainian Navy and what happened in 2014. And they admit that 75% of the Ukrainian naval military personnel and taking 75% of their ships with them defected to Russia.
Yeah.
So there was not a military back then. That being said, Russia was also not as economically prepared, not as militarily prepared themselves, but there wasn't a resistance, and there certainly wasn't I believe there wasn't the sanctions blueprint or framework in place either. Everyone wasn't as ready for what happened in 2022, but I still believe it there would have been costs, but the cost would have been less if Russia had intervened immediately after the government was overthrown and the February 21st agreement was thrown in the trash can by the West.
And Mark, what do you think about this whole idea that's being floated right now? I mean, I'll show you here on this other page here. So there is, at least in the European press, I don't know if you're hearing this in Russia, but that Trump supposedly wants to bring peace and that they think the peace will be thwarted by the European allies. Do you think there's any truth to that it's actually the Europeans that want to continue?
Sure. There's plenty of Americans that want to continue. Plenty of Americans already close to Trump. All right. But absolutely, the Europeans, Boris Johnson, in the last 48 hours, has given an interview where he says if the U.S. stops military aid, if Trump stops military aid to Ukraine, which I don't actually believe that he will, he may reduce it, but it was being reduced anyway, simply because the U.S. didn't have the military industrial complex to provide it. But regardless, he said that if the U.S. drops military and financial aid to Ukraine, then the UK will have to send troops into Ukraine. That's Boris Johnson. The top Polish general also said in the last 48 hours that Poland must prepare for war with Russia, and they need to prepare yesterday. And the head of the Christian Democratic Union, Menzer, whom is likely to head up the next government that will take power in Germany in the next few months, because the government there collapsed, the coalition collapsed, and they're going to have snap elections, I believe, in February now. Anyway, the leader of the Christian Democratic Union, who is likely to be the leader of the next government, said that they need to provide Taurus cruise missiles to the Kiev regime, that they need to deliver an ultimatum to Russia, that they need to give up the special military operation and withdraw from Ukraine now, or Germany will essentially start launching missile strikes into Germany. I mean, there's the fig leaf, we give them to the Ukrainians, but even Olaf Scholz admitted that when these high-tech long-range systems like the Storm Shadows, like the ATACMS, like the HIMARS, these things are transferred to Ukraine, they actually have to be operated and targeting programmed into the weapons by Western specialists. So this is actually those countries firing those weapons. And Putin has made that perfectly clear, and that would be an act of war. So all of this is happening at the same time that Trump just won the election. So obviously Europe is freaking out over this and is threatening to escalate. Yes, even
look at Germany. Olaf Scholz who his coalition government, this red light, green light, whatever they call it, the street light coalition, whatever the traffic light coalition, it's falling apart. They're going to have to do a snap election in January, right when Trump is coming in. They need to figure things out. I mean, the Germans are still not happy economically, right? And they are the economic engine of the European Union. Can they really afford to play this stupid game that Boris Johnson, who effed it all up for them in the first place, can they really afford to play this game of chicken?
They seem to think they can. At the same time, part of the reason that the German coalition government collapsed is a 9 billion euro hole in the German budget, and an argument over aid for, more billions for Ukraine. I mean, that was the official reason for the collapse. So it's just they haven't given up yet, right? They intend to truck on, whether they can or not. They will be able to do certain things to escalate, and then if Russia hits back, then they will come crying for Big Brother, U.S. and NATO to come and rescue them. Macron was talking just in the last month again about sending troops. This isn't over yet. The Kiev regime has not accepted defeat. Europe has not accepted defeat. And while the U.S., Trump is talking a peace through a deal, it's almost inconceivable that he would present any deal to the Russian government that they would accept. I can't imagine him doing that. I don't think he has the power to do that. So
we'll see.
I unfortunately see that at the very least, we're looking at continued war, right? Even if the support for the Kiev regime ultimately ends up being lower. In fact, we might see more desperate attempts to escalate, and increasingly desperate attempts, both by the Kiev regime and at least by their European partners, and eventually by Trump if he's denied, right? If Putin says, no, take your deal and shove it, what's he going to do? Is he just going to take that and wipe his hands and walk away? I don't think that the U.S. president can do that, whether it's Trump or anyone else. I hope he can.
We can put Zelensky in the National Toy Hall of Fame because he's itty bitty like He-Man. We could put him in the Toy Hall of Fame.
I don't think it's necessary to terrify children that way.
He's not He-Man. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much, Mark. Always good insight. Thank you.
That's interesting. I expected Mark hasn't really changed his outlook about this. This is pretty much where he's been. I really thought that he would
accurate though.
Oh no, Mark, he hasn't. He's not wrong. He's not been wrong. So basically this will make Trump look weak paradoxically if he yields to the neocons in his cabinet and so on too.
Yeah, but
he's got to be seen as making progress in moving towards peace. Otherwise, he's going to look bad. I mean, I think a certain segment of the isolationist wing of MAGA world is not going to be happy. Some of the liberals who crossed over to vote for him or who just stayed home won't be happy.
Sure.
There's going to be some pushback, but obviously what Mark says is true. There's also going to be considerable pressure on him to keep things going. The question is, how many shits will he give?
A lot of money involved, and we know how narcissistic Donald Trump is and what his image is. But now he really has to start looking at what his legacy is going to be, and if he wants to be his legacy to be this idiot that was played like a puppet by the deep state that also tried to kill him. I mean, no matter which way he goes, he's going to look weak by, somebody's going to look upon him as weak because either he was weak to the deep state and in being weak to the deep state, it means you didn't bring peace. Conversely, right? If you were strong, then you're going to hold up to what you said. I'm going to end this in 24 hours. I mean, to me, that a lot of people are going to view that as a strongman move. And But then others are going to say, well, you brought this peace because you conceded everything to Russia. So, I mean, he's damned if he do and damned if he don't. So he's got to pick his damning one way or another. And I think Mark's ultimate, view of what happens to Ukraine, I think, is ultimately what's gonna happen. It's gonna be a rump state with bits and pieces broken off, and maybe parts of it even absorbed into Poland, and other parts absorbed by Russia. And then it's gonna be this rump state somewhere in the middle, somewhere down the line, years from now, and never be a part of NATO, maybe a part of EU, and just, we're going to call it a day. And I think Mark's right. I don't see any end in sight immediately, but Trump is damned if he do, damned if he don't. So he's got to pick wisely. I got to say.
I feel like when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, you might as well just do what you want.
Yeah. I mean, he's a lame duck. Just do whatever the hell he wants. He can be the peace guy if he wants that to be his legacy, like he ended Afghanistan, right? You can be the peace guy. So
right.
I don't know. That's all we can hope for, is an end to the bloodshed. So, I mean, Russia's winning. They have there's no incentive to stop. So they're making more money than they ever have with their oil and stuff. So
yeah,
why stop?
I mean, like you said, Mark's got a good record on prognostication, but I'm gonna, hopium or not, I'm gonna keep hope alive, until, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic on this.
Well, I don't know. I'm just.
I mean, part of what makes me think
I've given up all hope.
I mean, we know that the Ukrainians have repeatedly wanted to talk to Russia over the last year or so, even before that, and that the U.S. has told them not to. So
I think all that needs to happen is somebody needs to give Zelensky an exit plan, and that little bastard will be out the door, chilling on Lake Como somewhere in Italy faster than you can count. I mean, he's got a house that's under his mother-in-law's name. He's got a big villa on Lake Como.
That's nice. I want a villa on Lake Como. Why can't I have one?
Escape. He just needs an escape plan. He's not even the president anymore. He's that kid is looking for an exit ramp, and somebody's got to offer it to him. What that looks like, I don't know. And then Trump's administration is going to be the one to have to figure that out. So
all right.
I think that's how you end it. All right. That's going to do it for us, right, Ted? That's yeah. Tomorrow we're going to be talking Haiti, some drama and gross stuff happening out of there. So anyway, reminder, guys, please subscribe to the show. Sub to us here on Rumble by hitting the like button, and then hitting the subscribe button if you're on the desktop version, the $5 a month subscription, so we can keep this show going for you. If you are enjoying what you see, you find value in what we're doing, please help us continue this work, because we are going it on our own. We're fully independent, and we really do rely on subscribers to help us not starve and not become homeless over the holidays, and pay some bills too. Collectively, if we get enough people to help us do this, then we can keep going and not have to, find other means to make an income. So please click that like button, the follow, the thumbs up, anything you can do. If you cannot, if you're not in the financial position to subscribe, share our work. Just the growth of the channel will also, in and of itself, help us create a community, so that way we can actually become profitable and make an actual living from this. So we appreciate you guys being here. If you're on YouTube, thank you so much. Just all simple as that. Click the like, click the follow, and simple as that. Other than that, tomorrow we'll be talking some kind of heavy and gross stuff coming out of Haiti with an expert. My buddy Dan Cohen is joining us. He's been on the ground a ton out there. He did a documentary, and I think this is going to be the U.S. Biden's last hurrah in Haiti, and Tony Blinken's, last swipe at Haiti before he gets out that door and, I don't know, becomes a professional bass player somewhere, I think, or whatever he's going to do after this. Whatever. F that guy. Don't like that guy. Hate Blinken. Hate Sullivan. Sullivan's wife won, by the way, her race in New Hampshire. I just want to say.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah, she beat a Chinese American lady that was running for that seat. So, yeah. So, Mrs. Jake Sullivan is Maggie Goodlander, out of New Hampshire.
Got it.
So she won that race. So we'll still see. It's not the last we're going to see of Jake Sullivan. Anyway, we'll call it a day. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Hasta mañana. Thank you everybody for being here. We appreciate you, and we'll be back. We will be back tomorrow with a lot more crazy news. All right,
guys. Thank you so much.
Adios, amigos. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.